What is it, a 50 caliber?
I can't remember. It was with a bunch of guns I bought. I came in one day with a whole bunch of guns, and I kept toting them in. And Lisa said, "Where have you been?" I said, "I've been to buy some guns." She said, "How many did you buy?" I said, "I bought all they had."
Okay, I'm trying to figure out if I want to tell my story before I do intro.
What do you mean, your story?
I got a story to tell before we get into our actual thing. It happened last night.
I would do the intro first, and
Does
then
it involve poop?
No.
Okay.
No.
I say that's like one of our stories.
I guess I'm not supposed to say on here.
You can.
I can leave it out. We have limits on what we will and won't say.
Right.
But
I think it would be funny.
certain times it's just inevitable,
well,
I'm afraid.
Sometimes it's needed for a story.
Yeah.
Poop
yeah.
just don't
So
work.
It's okay, as long as you're okay with people seeing it that way. No, okay. All right. Do we even need an intro, or do we just need to let it be what it was?
Real basic intro.
Let's do intro after
Okay.
squirrel.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
squirrel.
it involves a squirrel.
Is it that squirrel?
That squirrel, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
All right. Welcome to the Donnaha Station. Yeah, I don't know that was necessary at all, but we'll see how it goes. So last night, before we went to eat, or we got something to eat, I had a opportunity, and so here's the thing. I don't know why I'm borderline obsessed with squirrel right now, because it's like we don't have bag limits like a lot of states do. Mm-hmm. So if I see one, I'm always trying to think of a new recipe, and I'm trying to like stockpile squirrel at the moment. So I came in and I was setting stuff up for this, and I went back upstairs and I was playing with the kids, and I looked out the bedroom window, and there's a squirrel on an oak tree that you can see right out our bedroom window.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't Ric Flair, was it?
No, it wasn't that squirrel. So I took the opportunity to slip down here. Because, okay, hold on, let me back up. 2 weeks ago, I went out, and for whatever reason, even though I usually squirrel hunt with my 20 gauge, with target load, because if you're far enough away, most of the pellets don't actually penetrate. It just kills the squirrel, and you don't have as many pellets to dig out.
Clean.
But you're more accurate than you are if you have a 22 without a scope, and I don't have a scope on my 22 right now. So anyway, long story short, I got my butt kicked that day, and I shot at like 6 squirrels, but for whatever reason, I only brought home 2. So I see this squirrel last night, and I slip down here, and I get my 22, and I go out the window, and Meredith is sitting there doing laundry with Colton and Emberly looking out the window. And I think this is going to be the best opportunity for Colton to see me shoot a squirrel, because right now he's really into hunting. He thinks it's great. I bring home anything, and he wants to see it and help me clean it and all that. So I sneak down, and I go out behind the deck, and you all right?
Yeah, I'm good.
I prop up on a trash can, and he's just sitting there on this limb. Perfect. And I can see him cut eyes to me. So this squirrel is sitting on this limb looking at me, and I get set up on him. And I know they can all see from the window. So I'm thinking this is going to be awesome. I pull the trigger, perfect shot, right behind the neck. Doesn't cause a lot of damage to the body or anything like that. I mean, it was a nice shot with iron sights with the 22. And he stiffens up, goes, and falls underneath that limb and is hanging on to it. And then after about 30 seconds of sitting there, he just falls. And then he starts thrashing. As he's thrashing, blood's going everywhere, and I feel awesome. Like, this has been the perfect shot. So I turn, I get my squirrel, and I hold him up by the tail, and I look in the bedroom window, but there's a glare. So I can't see Meredith or the kids. All I can see is the window. And I'm sitting there holding my squirrel up, feeling awesome, because I just made this cool shot on a squirrel, just grinning from ear to ear. And I go inside, and Colton is sitting there bawling his eyes out.
Oh.
And apparently he has convinced himself that there's a squirrel around here named Sammy. And I shot Sammy. And I shot Sammy where he could see it. And then Sammy sat there in the death throes while Colton sat there just a mouth hanging open. And so he's bawling. And Meredith looks at me and she says, "You couldn't see us, but you're sitting there holding up this squirrel, just ecstatic, while your son is sitting there bawling his eyes out because he thinks you shot his favorite squirrel, and your daughter's screaming, yeah, in the background, excited about it. So I came into this, and I feel awful, but I mean, I had to clean the squirrel. I had to do something with the squirrel. But anyway, yeah, so that was the way everything went for me right before we went to eat last night. I felt like I had to talk about it. I looked at him, and I said, buddy, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to shoot your favorite squirrel, and I don't think that was Sammy. Yeah, that was Sammy. You shot Sammy. I said, well, are you mad at me? He goes, nods his head, yeah. I told Meredith, I said, I can't even be mad at him for saying that because, I mean, what do you do? I shot the squirrel. I said, well, where do you think your food comes from and stuff? And he said, I know we eat the cows and all that. He said, but we didn't have to eat Sammy. I thought, well, we're going to eat Sammy now. So anyway, yeah, that's the tale from said squirrel, and I felt like we should get into that before we get into our actual podcast. But now that that's out of the way,
I somehow knew that was going to be the case because you would not have had a second thought. I wouldn't have had a second thought about shooting a squirrel.
I didn't have a second thought about shooting a squirrel.
But you can't shoot Ric Flair.
No, okay. So Ric Flair is this, like, he's in a transition phase. I don't remember what they call it, but gray squirrels have like 3 phases they can go in, and some of them will transition into a blonde phase. Mm-hmm. And he's not albino and he's not gray. He's blonde. This one's got a little blonde in his fur, but this one's like blonde.
Okay.
And he hangs around the house. So that I won't shoot that one, but every other squirrel's fair game as long as Colton's not around.
Yeah, I was about to say, when I pulled over behind Jake's kind of.
Yeah.
I saw at least 3 running around.
I know.
You remember the time we shot the 2 turkeys?
Together?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we came over here and we saw some squirrels, and then we were just so pumped up we went after the squirrels, and we had shot 2 turkeys from 30 yards away.
But we went through like 7 or 8 turkey shells and never hit a single squirrel.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I had my 22 with a scope that was sighted in, and I was like, pow, pow, and I could never hit it.
We were out of luck for that day, apparently.
Yeah. I was lucky enough, though.
Yeah, we got the 2 turkeys.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's actually a squirrel competition that a guy from church sent me a picture. He's like, if you go sign up the day before, it's next weekend. He said the limit is 5, and they do it by weight. It's in Yadkinville somewhere, and I thought I'm pretty sure I'd win that competition because I'd just shoot like 12 and then figure out which ones were the fattest and take them in.
Yeah.
Because 5 squirrels is not many squirrels to take for like a competition. But anyway, next weekend's Colton's birthday, so I told him I couldn't do it.
Well, there was one in Walnut Cove that they had, and I didn't have time for it. But what I wanted to know, I asked the guy who was, I guess, in charge of it, if it was like they took, because you did it by group.
Yeah.
And I think the way they do it is they average all the weights together. Who had all the squirrels, like.
But that's what I'm saying. If I shoot 12, I can pick which ones I want.
Yeah, that's true.
And get the fattest ones out of all of them and take them in. I'm just saying I could shoot a lot of squirrels in a day. That wouldn't be that hard to do. But anyway, do you have any good squirrel stories?
I used to squirrel hunt a lot.
What about the squirrel when you were in the deer stand?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was sitting in a deer stand one day, just sitting there, and I see the squirrel coming, and he comes climbing the tree where I am, and I'm sitting just perfectly still, and he climbs up the tree, and he gets on the tree right here next to me, and he comes around the tree, and his head is right there next to mine, and I finally turned and looked at him, he went.
I haven't been turkey hunting my whole life or anything, but I've found that even though it takes up a little more space, I would much rather use a box call or the granite than a mouth call. They make me feel like I'm going to gag and throw up every time. I don't know what it is, but...
I don't like box calls because I don't think it gets the sharp tone.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I sit there with a turkey call in my mouth long enough, eventually it gets soggy.
Yeah.
And it gets this weird sound like the turkey's got an issue. Yeah. But you don't know until you're trying to call in the moment if it's actually going to be that way.
Yeah. Well, do you remember when we were over off Trinity Church Road and like 40, 50 turkeys were over in that other field?
Mm.
they make some god awful sounds.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because they were fighting and all that, but they were loud. It was unbelievably. I know everything gets quiet out in the woods, but it was like to be 100 and some yards away, as clear as you could hear them. I mean, well, it's a good thing. I don't like having that plastic in my mouth. I feel like it goes back and punches my little hang down baggie.
Your goozle.
Yeah, that's what my dad calls it.
Yeah. All right. Do you want to introduce the guest or me?
You do it.
You do the introduction. Why not?
All right. Well, I'm Elijah Cox. This is Jonathan Allen. This is Mitch Allen, Jonathan's dad. This is our second episode of Donnaha Station, and I guess if you want to know more specific details about us and why we're doing it and what we're about, I would check out the pilot episode. This episode, I think we want to go into more fun stuff, stories, and just kick back and relax rather than tell all these details that we've already been over. So, we're both about our faith, all three of us about our faith, working hard, love being in America and from the South, and love our heritage and the history here, Stokes County, Tobaccoville, King, this area, and we've trying to bring people on the show that have a lot of good stories as well as know the history, kind of the way we turned out to be, why we turned out to be the way we are, and that's pretty much the summary, I would say.
Okay, so why don't you start, Daddy, by talking about who you are and a little bit about what you do, and you can go into both building and farming if you want to. That's up to you.
Okay. Well, I'm Mitch Allen, and I've been living in this part of the world all my life. Grew up in a family of builders and farmers, and started working, doing both things whenever I was just a very small child, and realized pretty soon in life that I liked both of them. And I like to work. I like to work with my hands. I like to be outdoors. I like to build things. And so our family has always been known for building quality homes and doing a good job. And so I had a good heritage to come along. And just like the fact that whenever I finish with something, I have something tangible to look at, and that I feel like I've actually produced something, and not taken away from folks who make their living other ways, but I always like the fact that I could stand back and see what I'd done. A funny story, when we were working on a job years ago in a neighborhood, and gentleman that lived next door, he would come over every day and talk a little bit, and we were finishing up the job. It was an addition, and he came over and he said, "Man, you guys got it made." He said, y'all get done with something and you can see what you've done, and you can look and see the what your efforts have produced. He said, "I've never done anything where I could stand back and look at it and be proud of it." He said, "All I've ever done was sell cars for a living." He said, "Every once in a while I'd hoodoo somebody real good on a car," and he said, "That'd make me feel pretty good." But anyway, that's I grew up doing that. I guess I'm the third generation in our family to be a builder, and so that's been married for 38 years. So we've been together for a long time, have 3 sons, have 4 grandchildren, have a great family, love to spend time with my family, love to spend time with the grandkids, and just appreciate the fact that God's blessed us with this farm, this land that we have, that they can grow up and play and hunt and fish and run around and be outdoors and grow up doing some of the same things that I did growing up.
How long have you been working for yourself?
Well, I'm I turned 60 years old a couple weeks ago, and I have been working for myself since I was about 20 years old.
Okay. And you worked with Papa before that, growing up, on the jobs, doing different things.
Yeah. I grew up working for Dad. He was a custom home builder. And my mom was a big part of our business, and she got sick in 1979, and she had cancer, and she lived almost 3 years before passing away. And she was such a big part of the business that my dad just didn't have the heart to continue for quite a while. So I went to work for some other guys for just a little while, and then decided just to go out on my own, and never looked back.
Well, I think it's pretty cool because you just don't. There are several family businesses and stuff, but to have that long of a stint is pretty cool. I mean, you just don't hear about that, and it's not only the business that stayed relatively the same, but the way of life, being in the same part of North Carolina and continuing on with the same stuff. But just to give people a little background that don't know, me and you both know, but Mitch's company is well known for making really good stuff and not cutting corners, or very good name in the community if you ask anybody. So that's just a little background from an outsider, not in the family, but an outsider's point of view.
Yeah, it's funny. We've joked our whole lives when we go places, me and my brothers, people will walk up to us and say, "You're Mitch Allen's son, aren't you?" And we're like, "Who are you?"
Yeah.
Like that, growing up, that happened a lot, which is a good thing. I mean, that tells you the family reputation and the impact you have on the people around you. But it's always just been funny because you would have random strangers approach you as a child, and you're like, I don't know what's about to happen here, but they come up and almost without fail, somebody about once a month would find us, even like as teenagers somewhere. Mm-hmm. You'd see them staring at you and be like, they think I'm somebody else. They think I did something I don't know about. And
I got a booger on my...
Yeah, what's going on here? They think I'm just funny looking, and they would walk up to us and I've known your dad, and I knew your grandpa, or whatever. Or the ones I really like is, you won't believe the stories I could tell you about your great uncle, and you're like, I don't even know. Okay.
That would take a lot of editing.
Yeah, we can't really go into all the detail about that.
Eventually, I want to tell about my grandpa's Tundra and when Stanley pulled up.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. Remember we were trying to fix it. It was unfixable, and we were trying to fix it because and he pulled down to the shop.
Oh, the dent.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember what he did, though.
Well, he got out, and he got that, what's that chew called? The big bag of chew that he had.
Usually he just buys whatever's cheapest.
Yeah.
Well, he got this huge handful, and I was like, it can't fit in his mouth. There ain't no way. And he started balling it up, and he put the whole thing in, and he walked over, and you just kind of told him what happened, and he was like, you ain't fixing that. Like, you might as well go ahead and tell him.
Yeah, ever the optimist. What were you going to say, Daddy?
Excuse me. Regardless of what kind of work you do, whether you build things, or whether you farm, or whether you're a mechanic, or a police officer, or whatever you do, it's just not hard if you go about it in the way that it tells us in Colossians that we're supposed to do our work. It says, whatever you do, work at it heartily as working for the Lord and not for people. Mm. So if you do your work that way, no matter what your work is, then you can't help but have satisfied customers. You can't help but, build a good reputation. Now, I will tell you, there are people out there who are looking for something for nothing. They're looking to take advantage of somebody, and sooner or later you'll run into one of those, and you'll question yourself. But it's not your fault if you're doing what you're doing to the best of your ability, like you were doing it for the Lord, and if you're treating those people the way that you want to be treated, well, there's nothing else that you can do, and you can still, whether they act like a jerk, whether they try to cheat you out of your money, whatever, you can walk away with your head held high and know that you've done what you were supposed to do, and you can lay down and go to sleep at night without any issues.
I understand that.
Even if you write tickets to people.
Especially if you write tickets to people. Because, so, amongst my crew, because that's, on the traffic unit, that's mostly what we do is write tickets and handle crashes. And I'll have a day where I'll write 10 tickets, 15 tickets, and I'll reduce speed, I'll explain it. I usually, generally, like I've told you before, I go into detail with these people about how it could have been worse, how I could have charged you with something else, and ways you can go about making this easy, and then I gave you 2 or 3 months to fix it instead of just 1 month.
You can do that?
I can, yeah.
You can actually...
Yeah, if I have my court dates set ahead of time.
I got you. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, now you can't go too far. You have to have a first appearance at some point. But for traffic-related offenses, like minor traffic stuff, you can. Like if it's, but anyway, getting off topic. But
I've had a lot of those.
But that's the thing is I have to get in my mind, I'm doing this for a greater cause, not to please these people, not to please myself, because the one bad day where I go out there and someone blesses me up and down because they're mad they got caught speeding is the day I could just say, you know what, heck with this job. Like, so you have to get in that mindset right
But
there.
be honest, you have felt pretty satisfied at times giving somebody a ticket when they're a jerk. I would.
There's been a few, but honestly, it's still, even when someone, and that's the thing. People will look at me and some of the other people and think, they do that all the time. They deal with people like that all the time. It's no big deal. No, it always leaves a bad taste in your mouth. It don't matter how, And I've gone home, and that's the greatest thing about having a wife is she'll just sit there and listen and say, Yep, that's bad. Wouldn't do what you do. Couldn't do what you do. That's pretty much what I get. But that's the thing. Keeping, and what I tell people when they really are pissed off and really, how could you do this and all that? I say, you pull enough dead bodies out of cars and go do death notifications long enough, this is easy.
Yeah.
Compared to that, but yeah, definitely keeping faith. And I have to read. I didn't even know about that scripture, but I very much agree with it.
Well, I mean, I think everything's got good days and bad days. I don't care what you do, but yeah, I mean, you're ultimately the one responsible for what you do or don't do, how you represent yourself, and the way you act, whether it's in integrity or not. I mean, integrity is what you do when no one's looking, not what you do when everyone's paying attention. Right. And I think eventually, whether you operate the way you ought to or not, whether that's in a job or just the way you live your daily life, that's going to seep through. There's nothing you can do to avoid it, which is why there's always going to be people that talk, but the truth is the people that really matter already know, and they don't care about the gossip or what anybody else says. So, I mean, it does matter. There are times when I feel like it's easy to think, people will believe what a crappy customer says, even if it's a lie, or, people talk crap about police officers every day and how awful that they are these days. Everybody wants to defund the police, like that'd go well. But ultimately, the people that actually matter, they don't subscribe to that kind of thing anyway.
Too busy for it.
Yeah, and so ultimately, it doesn't matter. Even when you don't feel like anyone's paying attention, somebody probably is, and you still, the way you choose to operate on a daily basis, it pays dividends in the long run.
Right, and that's the thing, and a lot of people that bring up stuff and talk trash and all this, they want to see you waver. And when you don't, because you've got a higher cause and a higher calling, and that's just part of it, that's part of life, not pleasing everybody. When they're quicker to move on, and you're quicker to move on as well when you at least appear unwavering.
Hey, I got a story I want you to tell about getting a ticket.
All right.
The time that you were coming out the road, you were working late. The same guy pulled you over twice, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, see, I've had so many. No, I was on. Let's see. Now, you may be talking about the night I was coming home, and
I think you just gotten a new Ford truck or something.
it was late, and I had worked a long day. For years, it was not uncommon for me to work 100+ hours a week, and trying to get jobs done. And see, in our field of work, there's a lot of people that do the work, but there's a lot of times it's hard to find really good, skilled help. So I've just never been able to not put my hands on the work and just make sure all the details are taken care of. And usually once we got one to the point that, putting on hardware and adjusting cabinet doors and all the little details, I'd be there working late. And so many days I'd come home late, heat up supper in the microwave. This particular day I had left home to get some material for a job and then get to another job, and so I'd left home about 5 that morning, and it was around 11:30, and I was on my way home that night. And I turned in Spain Iron Mill Road, and I thought, you know what, it's late and there's nobody much out here. I'm just going to stretch this thing out. And so I laid into it, and as I came out of that curve and hit the straightaway, I was running about 98 miles an hour, and a blue light comes on at the end of the straightaway. I'm like, man, driving right straight toward this guy. So I get down there and I pull over, and by the time he gets to the window, I've already got my registration, my license out. And he was a real small state trooper, real small, slim guy. He said, "You got any idea how fast you were going?" I said, "I think about 98, I think." He said, "You know what the speed limit is on this road?" I said, "It's 45. He said, "You know what's going to happen if I give you a ticket for 98 and a 45? I said, "Yeah, I'm going to hire a real good lawyer to keep my license." He said, "Why are you driving this fast?" I said, "Buddy, I left home this morning at 5 o'clock, and I hadn't made it home from work yet." I said, "I'm just trying to get home, eat some supper, and get a few hours sleep before getting up and doing it again." He said, "Let me have your license." And he goes back and he checks, He comes back and he says, "I'm going to give you a warning ticket." And I looked at him, I said, "I love you, man." He said, "Do you know what you got to do with that warning ticket?" I said, "What?" He said, "Well, I guess water it up, throw it in the floorboard after I leave." And he said, "Go home, eat your supper, and slow this SOB down." I said, "All right, man." So the funny thing was, a couple days later, I'm working on a job, and I had come down with the flu or something. I was working by myself, and I felt really bad. And so I called Jake. He was little, and I had to call home to Lisa. Jake was really bad to get my hammers out of my toolbox and work on little projects, and he wouldn't put them back. And I'm trying to do some work, and I don't have a hammer. And so I called Lisa, and I said, I need you to run my hammer over here to this Starling job." And so she finds the hammer, and she's going out Spain Iron Mill Road, and she's got something else to do too. So she's running a little bit fast, but she's running like 55 in a 45. And the same state trooper stops her and gives her a ticket. Oh. And she said, "But I got to take my husband his hammer." I said, "Well, if you'd have told him it was the same guy he just stopped for running 98 in a 45, he might have let you go." But yeah, now the other one you're talking about was on Mountain View Road. One stopped me, and he gave me a ticket. They gave me a warning ticket, and I said, "Man, I really appreciate it." Well, 2 days later, he stops me coming through Pinnacle, speeding again. And he looks at me and he goes, "Didn't I just give you a warning ticket on Spain Mill Road a couple days ago? I mean, on Mountain View Road a couple days ago?" And I said, "Was that you?" And he said, "Yeah, that was me." He said, "Well, you're a slow learner." I said, "Well, I don't speed over there anymore." Needless to say, he gave me a ticket.
Well, the weird part about that is Jake seems to have inherited the same ability to get out of tickets no matter how bad they are. Mm-hmm. But I remember I was coming back from Tennessee, and that was the last time I'd been there after going to school for audio engineering. And I'll be honest, I was running about 91, coming down 77, and
we tell all these stories in the cops sitting.
I know.
I got my own stories.
Yeah. And I remember I passed the trooper. Like, I was coming home. I was ready to be home. I was sick of being there. So 91, I was doing 21 over. Okay, so not nearly as bad as that. And he pulled his gun on me and wanted me out of the car. It was bad. Yeah,
really?
Like, I almost lost my license over it. And then I didn't speed at all for a really long time. And then a couple years later, we had all been out at Jaren's having a bonfire. I was coming home, and my mom called me and said, something's wrong with Daddy. And he don't take off work for anything. He don't stop for anything. And at the time, we didn't know he had a kidney stone. But I thought something was wrong, and I needed to get home. So I'm flying through King, going down Meadowbrook Drive, and a King police officer stopped me. I was doing 9 over. Like, it wasn't bad.
Really?
Yeah, but he stopped me, and I told him, I was like, I'm trying to get to my dad, and he didn't cut me a break either. So apparently I didn't inherit the ability to talk my way out of tickets. But oddly enough, I missed my court date, and I didn't know it till I was standing in line to deal with the ticket.
Yeah.
And the DA must have been going on vacation or something that day, because he was trying to get people out quick, and he never caught it. So
Yeah.
I paid my court cost, and that went in a file somewhere, and I hadn't heard anything else about it, so I guess it's all well and good.
They're going to kick your door in one night and drag you out to jail.
So anyway, yeah, I didn't get the. I guess I got a little luck with tickets, but not like that. I don't ever get out of them.
You know, I don't know what it is. I don't. It's not even a certain demeanor people have when my choice in letting them go with a warning. Now 98. That's fast.
Yeah.
I'm just.
You got no choice.
I mean, but too, look at time and place. There probably wasn't another car on the road.
Yeah, it was late.
Yeah, I mean, and he was probably out looking for drunks, is what I would guess.
Yeah.
And he saw he'd been working all day. He's like, I'm not messing with this guy. You know, that would be my take. You know, I hate when someone's on the way to a job, on the way back, and been working, and I can tell it.
Yeah.
That's my least favorite ticket to give. But I you know. It's really, I had a guy one time, he was from Ohio or something like that, and he was coming up 52, and he was doing about 25, 30 over. I pull him over, and I get to the car, and he's a bigger guy, like probably 50-something, I don't know, big, probably 300 pounds overweight. And I came up to the window, and he was the honest person I've ever stopped. I was like, why are you going so fast? He said, it's like, you know, the speed limit drops to 50. This is when it was 55 near Germantown Road.
Yeah.
And he said, I got to poop so bad. I said, well, you know.
And you're holding me up?
And here's the thing. I was like, I don't know if this guy's telling me the truth. I couldn't. He was sweating, but I don't know if that's because he's a bigger guy. I've been in that
but you know those sweats.
Oh, I know. So, but I didn't know whether to trust him or not. So what I said, listen, here's what we'll do. I'm not cruel, but I'm probably going to write you a ticket. But hand me your license, go to East Haynes Mill exit, get off, go across the street to the Sheets, use the bathroom, and I'll be waiting outside when you get back out. And sure enough, he drove right. I turned my lights off. I followed him up there. He went and did his business because he may not have known where to go.
Yeah.
Because he did have the out-of-state license and tag, and so I follow him up there, and he comes out, and I reduced it to not just 9 over, so he didn't have to come back from Ohio.
Yeah.
So he could do it online, and he was nice. And then I give him the ticket, and this is the worst part. This is always the worst part. I write him his ticket. He thanks me for reducing it, and then talks to me for 20 minutes because he's like a really nice guy. And I start feeling worse and worse and worse. And I about took the ticket back and ripped it up. But he was like, oh, no, I did it. I was going too fast. I should have pulled over, 5 exits ago when I started feeling it coming. Then I was like, oh, God, this guy's nice. I hate this.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm going to say that's something that most people lack these days. And it's, at least to me, it's refreshing when someone's actually willing to take responsibility for what they do. Because it's like everybody wants to blame something else right now.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so at least he actually admit. I mean, he did.
And those are I like those stops, whether I write them or not. I'm the quickest to reduce somebody who admits that they were late for work and trying to get there on time. I'm the because that's it's still a pain in the butt. It's $206 right now is for 9 over, and I give them several months though to get that money together instead of having to go to court, mandatory court date, possibly getting points on your license and all this. So if you're with me, if you admit to it, you say, yep, I'm in the wrong. You don't try to, because I do it for a living all day long. I've got all this equipment I have to test regularly and constantly. It's not going to be wrong.
Yeah.
And plus, I have to make a visual assessment of your speed on my own, and I can't get a radar certification or a LiDAR certification unless I can come up with I have to go right along with a specialist, and I have to block out the screen and guess like 20 cars speeds
Really?
on my own before I get a certification to have the radar, because in court you can't just rely on the radar. It just confirms your visual observation.
Huh.
Well, I guess you can't have anything but a visual observation. You can't really have a. But
I didn't
anyway.
know you had to do it based on what you see.
Yeah, so that's you're going off in North Carolina at least. You can't just rely on the LiDAR or radar. You have to look at whether it's nighttime. You have to look at the headlights, if it's passing stuff, and you have to come up with your own speed, and it has to be within 1 or 2 miles an hour of the speed that the radar gives you. You also have to do a tuning fork test after each time you write a ticket or take enforcement action. You have to calibrate it, or not calibrate it, but do the tuning fork test to make sure it's still accurate. But yeah, I definitely, when people are honest, that they're the most likely to, when they start saying, well, my friend's having an asthma attack in the back and all that, or but I've only had I got to poop one time, and it was the guy from Ohio.
That's
and
funny.
I regret writing him that ticket.
That made a good story.
Oh yeah.
I don't actually think I know this, but who was the first person to start building houses in our family?
That was my grandpa, Si.
It was Si. Did he do something else before that?
He farmed too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talking to one of the uncles, he said that they tobacco farmed too. And the last year that they raised tobacco, he told them when they were housing the last barn of tobacco, he said, y'all enjoy this, boys. He said, because after this year, we ain't doing this no more. And he pretty much just put all his efforts into building after that.
Did he? So he had already been building at that point too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But have to remember, excuse me, back in those days, there wasn't nearly as much construction going on as there is today. So it took something besides just building houses for people to make a living.
And where did they live?
Right across the road.
Right across the road. Not in that same house, did they?
Yeah, Papa built that house. They used to live in a little old shack house up there where Uncle Stanley lives now. There was a little old house up there with a dirt floor they lived in, and then Papa Si built this house across the road here.
Hence why I call this road Allenville.
Yeah, there's a bunch of us down here.
And there for a while, he and my dad, they would have to work out of town some. They went to Norfolk, Virginia, and worked on buildings on the military base and things quite a bit. And back then, they would talk about how many kegs of nails they would drive in like a week's time, because back then the nails came in kegs instead of boxes. No nail guns back then.
Anyway, all right, so it's funny, you said you call this Allenville, but yeah, a bunch of us have lived here a really long time. Now, if you go out the road, it's like a major highway because it's between everything, but it used to be, it was kind of middle of nowhere. Nobody used the road to get from place to place. And when you were growing up, it was dirt for a while, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't dirt when I was growing up, but it was. It wasn't too many years before that they paved it. But when I was growing up, you could go in a day's time. There probably wouldn't be any more than a couple dozen cars come up and down the road. Now you may have to sit at the end of the driveway and wait for a dozen cars to go by before you can pull out in the road.
I did yesterday. I waited almost 5 minutes before
Yeah.
I could pull out to go to work.
I think it's changed just since I've started coming over here when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't that bad. Would that be early 2000? Well, no, that wouldn't be. Probably 2006 or 7.
Something like that, yeah.
But it's changed just in 15 years or so. But so before we get away from the Allen family history, I want to know more about how y'all related to the Floyd Allen and the famous.
Well, I'd like to get into all that on another one too. I mean,
Okay.
we can briefly touch
Yeah,
it if you want to.
Yeah, I think that would be, since we're at history.
Explain what you're talking about a little bit first.
Well, because you told me long ago, because I got to talking about the Allens from Virginia and the Carroll County shootout and all this, and how long ago, because we have land in Carroll County, and my family does, and apparently the rumors were, we have no way of knowing that but apparently our ancestor somewhere along the lines helped hide one member of the family. We don't know who, but
Okay, I got a funny story about all this though. So the shootout happened, which we're somehow related to those people. A few weeks ago, when we were on the job, the guy who does our sheetrock work, he's originally from Virginia, from around that area, roughly. You know how my Uncle Stanley is, and well, you met several other people in the family. He said that one of the guys involved in that shootout tried to buy a cow, and he didn't like the price.
His great grandpa's cow. Or something.
Yeah. And so
Well, they wouldn't sell it to him.
they wouldn't sell the cow, and so the Allen fella, he just shot the cow, and that just sounds like something somebody in our family would do. I thought it was funny.
yeah, it's just interesting. My dad had a book, lent it to my sister, and it went into the vortex that will never be seen again. So I'll have to either buy it online or try to find it somewhere. But yeah, it's just interesting that we both have family from the same. Yours is way more popular than mine, or infamous maybe, but
I have a book written by Sidney Allen.
I think that's the one.
Yeah, see, there's several different variations of that story, and most of what people hear is actually not entirely true. It makes him out to be sort of this vengeful, crazy hothead, and later on, that was sort of his version of it never took off because it wasn't nearly as entertaining to people. Really, is what I personally think. But anyway,
There's actually a guy that came forward several years ago. It's been several years ago now. It came forward, and before he passed away, he said he needed to do this. He knew he didn't have much time left, and he had been the bailiff in the court that day, and he signed an affidavit to the effect he said I fired the first shot.
Really?
yeah. So the rumors that the Allens went into the courthouse, and when they convicted him, they all just started shooting.
It's not true.
Not actually true.
Yeah, because he says I'm not going back, or I'm not going to jail, or I'm not going
I'm
back
just
to
not
jail.
going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that's when they said no one knows. Well, now we know. And here's the thing: so many people have approached the family, like I guess, wanting to make a movie about it, because it would be better than it'd be just as good as Hatfields and McCoy's type, but they're like, nah, we don't want no part of that. And that's the only thing with doing a movie. Like,
Oh, yeah,
it would get screwed up even worse.
Yeah.
But that's pretty cool though. I didn't know that.
It is funny that the way those movies go, because very seldom when Hollywood gets involved is there a whole lot of truth in it.
Yeah.
But I've got the book. Like I say, you're welcome to read it. But it's just, I thought it was kind of cool. I'm like, it was not unusual that they carried their guns into the courthouse.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a totally normal thing.
Oh yeah. 20, 30 years ago.
Now you can't carry your pocket knife into the
Yeah.
register of deeds office.
Yeah.
Well, 20, 30 years ago, guys would have their shotguns, rifles on the back rack of their truck,
Go to school.
because they were going hunting.
You did when I went to school.
Yeah.
And now I had to go renew my concealed carry permit about a year ago. Or no, I had to go to Stokes County because I moved back for Forsyth County, and I had to have the papers showing. They give you this little paper that says he moved counties and we're okay with it, basically.
Yeah.
I had to take my nail set out of my pocket and hide it under the bench on my way in the door because I couldn't carry it, and they would have seen it as a weapon.
A nail set?
Nail set. Well, I mean,
Like a punch?
yeah, I could stab somebody with it if I had to. But yeah, I hit it, and anyway, yeah.
You could probably do more damage with your bare hands.
I don't know.
It's worth looking up some of the furniture that Sidney Allen made when he was in prison. Oh, it's insane. So
They probably didn't have all the tools, stuff that we have now.
I like to think, that maybe some of those skills passed down, because I've always made a lot of furniture pieces and things like that. But he made some unbelievable pieces of furniture. Some of them are in museums, and I think there's a museum in Carroll County, Virginia now.
It's right there at the courthouse.
The old courthouse is now a museum, the
Right.
courthouse where that took place.
Right.
And they've got some of those pieces of furniture in there that he made.
Yeah, I've always wanted to go. I've drove past it 150, 200 times. That's the way we go through Cana,
Yeah.
the back way. I don't like going up 77. But I've been by it so many times. We've wanted to go to the play they do at Christmas.
Yeah.
It's always sold out by the time, we look into it. But I've always wanted to go. I've been up to it, and I've seen the bullet hole in the stairs.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
still
you
there.
can see it from the road
Oh, yeah.
actually driving by.
And they said there used to be blood on the stairs, and this is kind of like a haunting tale, but they said there was blood on the stairs from somebody. I don't know who, but they said no matter how many times they paint it, sand it, because they didn't replace the boards or the stairs, but they said no matter how many times they do it, it always, you can see it. Like it'll be because I think they painted it green at one point, that it's always a different shade of green where the blood is. Over time, you can see it.
That's weird.
I know, it's just a kind of a spooky.
I wonder if there's any truth to it.
I don't know. I don't know for myself, but that's just what I heard. But
Anyway, the furniture thing and the stuff that Sidney Allen made, that's a pretty good transition back to our original topic. So you've been building for yourself forever, and then so your granddad did it, and then your dad did it, and then several of your uncles, my great uncles, built too.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think there's something to that about these crazy furniture pieces. One of them was called like the Eighth Wonder of the World or something that Sidney Allen made. It's this crazy looking artistic thing.
Had thousands of pieces in it.
Yeah.
different pieces put together.
Some of those genes have been there for a long time, I guess, in the family tree. But how did you know that's what you wanted to do, and when did you know you wanted to be a builder?
Well, whenever I was just a boy, I just always felt like that's what I would do, and I guess because I went to the job and worked, at that point, it's just like, this is what we do. But by the time I was ready to graduate from high school, Daddy said, I'll pay to send you to college wherever you want to go. And I said, no point in wasting your money, me going to college. I know what I'm going to do. I enjoyed it, and felt like I was relatively good at it. And so, I don't want to give the misimpression that every day I go to work it's just like, oh, this is the greatest thing in the world. I have so much fun doing my job, because some days it is. It's a pain in the butt, and construction is hard on your body, and customers can be hard on your mind. They can be demanding, and so forth. But every job can be that way, and I don't not trying to make anybody look bad here, but I hear people say, well, if you find something you love to do and you go for that, you'll never work a day in your life. That's BS. That's not true. No matter what you do, it's not going to be fun every day. I love to fish. I especially love to bass fish. Some days you go out there and maybe fishing a tournament or something. It's like working. And you may fish all day and never get a bite. And it's not like, man, this was great. So no matter what you do, sometimes it's not going to be just the greatest thing in the world. But one piece of advice I would give to people who are always looking for something better, always chasing another rainbow, there's a lot to be said for staying the course. Because if you start something and you get little tired of it, or you get a little frustrated and you say, well, I got to find something else. And then after a while, you get bored with that and you want to find something else. You get to a point in your life and you're like, I never really stuck with anything. But you do something, you do it to the best of your ability, and you stay the course. And after a matter of time, it will pay off. I mean, construction has allowed us to do other things and to invest in other things, that have paid off for us. So, some days it's really hard. Some days you think, why in the world do I keep doing this? But you get up and you put on your boots and you go to work. I mean, that's what you do. You just get up and you keep going. And, when you get knocked down, you don't lay there and cry like a baby. You get up and you go again.
I think that's a unfortunately a dying way of looking at things, because people in our generation don't look at work the same.
Nobody wants to work.
I want to be the last one in, first one to leave, get paid the most, and do the least amount of work. And they don't care about self-fulfillment. They don't care about being,
they don't care about serving anybody else or doing something that leads to a benefit past themselves.
Yeah, and all they care about is getting back home, playing video games or whatever they do, and they could care less about being a productive member of society, as I'd call it, where other people, like the three of us, I would say, don't feel right when we go to work and we don't do anything productive. I mean, you have some days where you're not feeling it. Those days come and go, but overall, that is something that people in our generation are lacking. I mean, when I was in high school, you know what everybody wanted to be? A pharmacist.
Yeah.
And we need pharmacists. I mean, you need people that can get the right, pills in the right bottles, because you don't want to be, have a headache and get pills and grow a tail or something. But you need pharmacists, but not everyone can make $90,000 a year sitting behind a desk in the AC and the heat. You got to have people that are going to go out and work for it, and that have the capabilities to do plumbing, to be an electrician, to do all this stuff.
Well, there's a day coming where it's going to have to balance back out, and it's actually already started, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's full force yet, but there's going to come a point when people can't do computer jobs and pharmacist jobs, and all these things. They still need somebody to build them a house. Mm-hmm. There still has to be somebody to, run traffic radar or whatever, plumb a house or something. But eventually, those people are going to have to figure out during the hard times, they're not going to be able to get those jobs, or a lot of people are going to be laid off. And all of a sudden, you're going to need to know how to do a trade or a skill. And eventually, it will come back around. I mean, there's good times and there's bad times. And I think sometimes hard times make us it tips the scales back in the right direction. Mm-hmm. And there is a day coming. But you were talking. Go ahead.
Just real quick, I've heard a saying that goes along with this. It's a preacher, and I can't remember his name, but he said he was talking about cars, and his reference was, my grandpa drove a Model T, my dad drove a pickup, I drive a Corvette. And talking about a friend of his was saying this to him, mm-hmm. and my son will drive a Lamborghini. His son will drive a Toyota Corolla. And the whole thing is, you look at the progress and how, things got better and then worse. Somehow this next generation hit bottom. And he said, hard times make hard people. Hard people make
good times.
Easy times. Easy times make easy people and soft people. And that's the difference is,
soft people make hard times.
Right. We luckily with both of our parents, we came in with, they took care of us. We had more than probably they had, or just as good, because that's what parents do. They want you to have the best they can for you. But also they made us earn stuff. They made us work. They made us earn it. They didn't just give us stuff, for free. Other than just maybe Christmas and birthday presents here and there. But they made us earn it so we understand the value of work and the value of commitment and stuff like that.
There's actually a couple people that come to mind, and I'm not going to name them, obviously, in this, but they're very well off, and they did not want their kids to have to work, and he knows probably who I'm talking about. And I think you told one time he was doing his son a disservice by not teaching him to work, because there was a time coming where he'd have to know how to do something. Yep. Am I right on that?
Oh, yeah. One of the worst things you can do to a kid is to not teach them to work, to teach them that they're entitled. And I've had, over the years, I've had people come to me and say, hey, can you work my son over the summer? And I would say, well, what can he do? And you're like, well, whatever. Well, no, what does he do now? Does he mow the yard? Well, no, I mow the yard. Well, does he weed eat? Well, no, I weed eat. Well, and you talk to him enough and you find out what the kid does is he plays video games. And, I inevitably tell him, hey, your kid's 15, 16 years old. You want me to make a man out of him, and you should have started that many years ago. We live in a time when men have quit teaching their sons to be men, and women have quit teaching their daughters to be young women. And, it's a shame, because people don't think they should have to do things. And it started a few decades ago, because when I was in school, every young man, whether he was going to do it for a living or not, wanted to learn some trade skills.
Well, there was a pride in it. It was almost like a part of being a man.
I mean, it was very few of the guys in school didn't take shop or metalworking or something. And, it got to a point that people started telling their kids, that's a shameful way to make a living.
Yeah.
It became almost disgraceful if you worked with your hands. I tell you, a funny story without using names, and you'll know what I'm talking about. Used to be at church, we would do the mission blitz thing every year, and I'd get all the materials together and try to oversee some of the projects, and then put together a big project. In this particular year, I had reconstructive surgery on my hand. It was on my left hand that particular year, because I had worn this joint out here, and they had to reconstruct all this. I was in a cast. So I told them, I said, look, I'll get the materials together. I'll do what I can over the job, but I can't put shingles on this roof that we're going to tear off. So I'm over there, and there's one of the teenage boys. It's there helping on Saturday, tear off shingles. And his parents had been fussing at him about going to college because he didn't want to. And they were pressing him hard to go to college. And so the minister, a friend of both of ours, he said, you see, he's tearing off, the boy's tearing off shingles. He said, this is why you need to go to college and get a good education, so you don't have to do this kind of crap for a living. And so I look up, and I look at him, and I said, you just couldn't do it, could you? He said, what? I said, you just couldn't go all day without pissing me off. He said, what are you talking about? I said, what do you mean this kind of crap for a living? I said, I've been doing this kind of crap for a living my whole life. I said, I'm probably the only one here that don't owe anybody anything. I said, everything I got's paid for. I said, and you guys, I said, I've got to leave shortly after lunch, and you guys are terrified already because I'm leaving. Because none of y'all have a clue how to do this. I said, the day is coming when you're going to have to be content to pay somebody a lot of money, because there's going to be so few people doing this kind of work, and none of you guys know how to do it. And your kids are not going to know how to do it because you've taught them that it was shameful to do this kind of work for a living.
Absolutely.
I said, and it's not shameful. I said, I've made a very good living doing this. So, again, it's just a matter of whatever you do. A lot of times when I was growing up, I came through a period of time as a teenager where they were at church, they were trying to get every kid to go to Bible college. You need to go to Bible college, you need to go to Bible college. And several ministers and stuff were telling me, oh, you need to go into the ministry, you need to go into the ministry. Well, God didn't call me to go into the ministry. That wasn't my calling.
Yeah.
And it was almost like they were trying to make me feel like if I didn't, I was wasting my life, that I wasn't serving the Lord. And, it was such a huge relief to me the day that it finally dawned on me reading that scripture that whatever you do, do it heartily as working for the Lord. So whether you're a plumber, whether you're a cop, whether you're a mechanic, whether you're a pharmacist, whatever you do it the best that you can do, like that's who you're working for, and you got no problem. I mean, God will bless that. God will bless that, and He'll use it. He'll use it to bless other people. I always felt like when we got done with a project, we've provided a home for a family. And, and if we do it right, and we put it together right, and we use good materials, and we do good work, not only have we provided a home for a family, but that home will gain value. And so, no, they're never at a point where they're upside down in it. It's always going to increase in value. And so, it always bothers me to see when people act like if somebody actually has to get dirty doing their job, or they have to sweat doing their job, or they have calluses on their hands from doing their job, that's somehow a disgraceful way to make a living.
Well, you were talking about no one's teaching their kids how to do anything anymore, and you were talking about the video games. Going back to the furniture, you were talking about ancestors and some of the projects that are in museums and stuff. Now you built some furniture as a kid that it was tangible things that you used your time to create. That, if I'm not mistaken, some of that, like there's a kindling box over here in this basement that you built as a kid, and there's like a little coffee table that my mom still has in the house that I remember growing up. It's something that lasted. It's something that actually was useful, that's gone on to serve a purpose.
I built gun cabinets for people when I was still in school, and Daddy had a little bit different way of teaching me how to do things, which I know that he understood that I had some ability, but he would take me to a job and leave me and say, "Do this, I'll be back to get you," and I would have to figure out how to do it, and so that's what we did. And so many of the things that were done when we were being raised and coming up, people look at today like it's cruelty or something, and that you're not doing your kids right. And nothing could be further from the truth. You got this generation that's telling their kids, it's all up to you, whatever you want to do. I mean, we've gone so far stupid that we're telling kids they can decide what gender they want to be. I mean, good gosh.
When they don't even know what they want, they don't even know how to put their shoes on and tie them, and you want to let them, or you want to let them wait till they get old enough to decide for themselves. Well, guess what? When they're 5, 10, 15, their brain's still not developed. That's a whole different can of worms.
You got people that say they want to let 16-year-olds vote now, and you got 16-year-olds that can't even decide they can't even determine what their gender is. I mean, we don't need those people deciding the fate of our country.
I think, if anything, they should raise the age because guys don't get fully developed average till 26. So technically,
is that what was wrong with us?
Yeah. Oh, well, that wasn't.
I was married at 23.
What I want to say too, go back real quick, what he said about when he was coming through church, because some churches do have that where they are trying to push, not bashing any church, and I get we need ministers, but here's the thing too. What I've learned is sometimes a person who doesn't go to church and doesn't see a preacher will be impacted more by someone who does construction, a police officer who comes to help them.
Well, sure, yeah.
That's the flip side is if it doesn't mean you're not ministering.
Sure you are. You're ministering.
Right.
Not everybody can be a preacher. They still need someone to work on their car.
Right.
Or the pharmacist still needs someone to build a house.
And you can be that person. Let's say you are a mechanic and someone comes to your shop and they've been swindled before and they don't trust mechanics, and you come in and you talk to them for a little bit and they're expecting a $1,000 bill, and really it's just a few $100s or something, and you talk about the Lord or you talk about your family, and they see, sometimes you don't even have to talk about it all that much, they see how you are and how you operate.
Exactly right.
Simply your actions being put into place.
Right, and that can have a lasting effect on their life, and that's what people don't understand is, yes, we need preachers. We need people to lead the flock, so to speak, at the church. but we also need people that live their lives in a way that show other people, that kind of bring them to the right path. And of course, no one's perfect. We all make mistakes. So do preachers. But overall, how you lived your life can have a bigger impact on people. And I think that's important to understand, that a calling for the Lord does not mean ministry, specifically as a preacher or a missionary. Sometimes it's doing something you're skilled at, but adding the whole, hey, I'm a Christian, or I'm a lover of Jesus, and I operate my life that way, not just my profession.
Yeah. So what would you say is the greatest blessing or benefit to someone from what you do for a living?
Well, whenever you do a job for somebody, and you run into them years later, and they just they want to talk, and they just tell you how much they still enjoy their home. Or like, for instance, I spoke with a guy yesterday. He sent me an email. He bought his parents' house that I built about 20 years ago, and he had some questions for me, and he said he just was so complimentary, and he was telling me how much his mom and dad thought of me, and so when you realize that you've blessed a family over the years, and at the time you're just trying to get their job done to the best of your ability and get them in it, and move on to the next job, you don't realize so much. But when years later you see them, and they talk to you and they tell you what a blessing you were to them, it means a lot. I mean, I've got multiple customers that we've built for, who, when they get ready to do something else, they call me, and getting ready to build one family a house, the third house for this particular family. And when they it's sort of frustrating, because remodeling is not our main thing. It's hard for us to work it in. But when previous customers call and they want some remodeling work done, I just don't feel like I can tell them no, because they call and they say, well, I just really don't want anybody else to do it. And that's a huge compliment to you, when they put that confidence in you and they say, I don't want anybody else to do it. You realize, well, I must have done something right. I must have blessed this family in some way, and so that means a lot.
So there's plenty of people that I would say have been good customers, and you've done very well, and Papa had a really good reputation from the time that he built too. But what would you say are some of the hard times or difficult situations? I know, like when you built yours and Mama's house, I mean, interest rates were really high, and you've talked about times when there wasn't a whole lot of work going on. What are some of the harder times that you've had to work through over the years, and what would you say got you through that, and what were some of the lessons maybe learned from those times?
Well, one of the worst was signing a note for somebody and them hanging me with their debt all of a sudden for $108,000, and I had to take my working capital and pay off their debt. But and that's pretty devastating. But again, you just stay the course and you do what you're doing. You don't look at your tithe that you're giving to church each week and go, well, we can't afford to do this anymore. You just stay the course and you do what you've been doing, and God, in turn, he just blessed our effort, and we had all that we needed, and we're able to keep going, pay everything off, pay all our bills. And some customers every once in a while are pretty hard, but you take those customers and you treat them just like you do the really good customers. The Bible says, if your enemy's thirsty, give him water. If he's hungry, give him something to eat. You just treat them like you do. You don't lay down and let them walk on you, but you don't treat the bad customer any differently than you do the good customer, because at the end of the day, you can lay down and know that you've done what you're supposed to do. You can't control what other people do, but you can control what you do. And eventually, if they don't straighten up and do right, they're going to have to give an account for what they've done and the way that they've treated people. But you shouldn't let the way that they operate and the way they behave bring you down to their level.
Yeah.
Stop for a second and let me reset that. The last time we'll wrap everything up.
Okay. We're still gonna get to some good stories though.
I know, we are.
And I don't think I've said shit yet.
I don't really care if there's something.
No,
I want
you
it to come
can.
across as more genuine.
That's the thing. You can, because he can bleep them out, and I would almost prefer it. 'Cause
Yeah.
That's more genuine. Because if the three of us were normally sitting around talking,
Exactly. I want it to feel more natural. All right. It's funny you said that about the tithing, though, because I heard something this week that was really cool. This guy, this is an old story. It was like 100 years ago, but this guy in the community was known for not having a lot, but he started to tithe in his church really, really heavily. And it went on for about a year. And the preacher came to him one day and said to this guy, he said, I know kind of what you make, and I know what you're tithing. He said, I'm not really sure how you're even still paying your bills and taking care of your family. He said, well, preacher, I'm not giving based off what I make. He said, I'm giving based off what I want to make. And it was his way of having faith. The interesting part was, and I'm not saying this is just magically going to happen for anybody that tithes, but because he had the faith to do that, he actually started to grow his income in massive ways. And I don't think it's necessarily just a magic system where what you give, God returns more just because you give more. I think he had a mindset of abundance and was willing to bless other people regardless of his circumstances. And because of that, he made up for it with the way he operated in other circumstances. And I believe that faith went on to help him also be blessed, and God blessed him. But it's just an interesting way to look at it. A lot of times that's the first thing people cut out. But yeah, as we kind of wrap it up, you've thought of some funny stories that he's told over time, and then I'd like to see what just comes off the top of his head. But yeah, well, I'd just like to get into some funny ones. Well,
yeah, and I do want to say one thing. When I was pulling in, just something I remember, and he probably don't even remember this, but when I was a teenager and I had that little white car that I drove like an idiot around, the Mitsubishi.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was several times that I would peel out getting out of here because I was an idiot. And because I'm on a steep hill and it's front wheel drive, all that good stuff. But I remember
testosterone.
Yeah, that too. I had a lot of me and you. The times we actually wrecked, we usually weren't doing anything wrong. Well, probably shouldn't have been in the snow that one time. But anyway,
you're talking about you, not me, or me.
Kind of both of us.
Okay.
When you were in the snow, we were talking about taxes. He didn't believe the word
insurance.
We said.
Insurance.
Yes, it was insurance. We didn't have the radio.
Now
on.
we look like we were lying.
No.
Because you said taxes. I don't remember.
I just remember we were talking about an adult thing, and your Tundra hit ice, and we just went, shoom, and you probably kept me from getting hurt, or both of us getting hurt.
Because I turned a little bit.
Well, you could have hit it head on,
yeah.
And we both would have been really hurt, or you could have hit it at my door. Those were the options, or something in between, and you hit the front right quarter panel.
And you got out and you said, dude, it's fine. And then I went around to the corner and my wheel was facing the opposite way of the way it's supposed to be facing.
Oh, I was in shock. I was like, because I just remember we hit the bank and we go up in the air. And I don't know how far we went up, but when we came down, snow went boom over the windshield, and the snow fell, or we went through it, tree, and you went like that, and you hit it perfect where we glanced off and didn't take the full brunt of it, and it tore your axle, the front axle out, or the wheel.
I don't remember. It was bad.
That was
anyway, what were you getting at about the car and here?
It's that story was longer than this one. That's how I am with stories. I tell 8 to get to the main point. But I remember I came over one day, and I was sitting in the living room, and this is before y'all had the add-on.
Yeah, still the small living room.
Yeah. So I remember I was sitting there, and he came over, and he said, or maybe I was standing up. He said, sit down in this chair real quick. And I sat down. I was like, oh boy, I'm in trouble for something. I knew it. And so I sat there, and you got down on your knee, and you held my foot down. He said, now pull up on your foot. And so I did. He said, okay. And you put your hand under my foot, and he said, now push down. I'll do it real easy. He said, so nothing's wrong with your foot. So why are you peeling out here, squalling your tires every time you leave? And I was like, because I'm an idiot.
I remember when he had just had the driveway poured at the rent house that used to be, it used to be my great uncle's, but Jake lives there now. He just had poured that driveway. I mean, it was like he took the caution tape to keep people from driving on it down that morning. And we used to practice over there and play music and hang out and stuff when nobody lived there. And you whipped it in there and went and left these black marks sliding in from the road, like a big old swat.
And it was beautiful too. It was a beautiful slab of concrete, and I just had no clue.
After you left, he came over a little while later. I'm not quite sure I remember what you said. You were mad because it was a brand new driveway. I think he said, "Why the hell did he do that?" Oh,
it was beautiful. It wasn't like a 10-year-old faded concrete that needed to be pressure washed.
No, it was like beautiful. It had just got to where you could drive on it that morning.
Not a crack in it. Once you, because you told me, you're like,
stayed for a long time.
You said, why did you do that? He just got done. I was like, oh crap, I can't come back here for at least a year.
Anyway, funny stories.
Yeah,
either building stories or family stories or whatever.
You were talking about dissatisfied customers. Maybe this one wasn't dissatisfied, but I'm almost positive you told this story to me a while back, but something about a lady wanting to see the mountain from a bathtub.
She told me she wanted me to turn her house so that the picture window at her master bathtub, she was looking out at Pilot Mountain. And I told her, I said, your house is too close to the road to not put it straight with the road. It won't look right. House has to go straight with the road. Now I want to look out that window and be looking at Pilot Mountain. Well, I put the house straight with the road, and we framed up the floor and had the walls laid off and exterior walls framed up, and the picture window opening was framed. And she and her husband came over, and she walked up to that window opening, and she looked out of it, and she said, I'm not happy. I said, why not? She said, I'm not looking at Pilot Mountain. I walked up to her, and I put my hand on her head, and I turned her head like that. And she said, there it is. I said, you turn your head, you don't turn your house.
Yeah.
You remember, of course, you know Jake's buddy Chris.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You remember when he came over and wanted to play Mercy one day?
I don't remember. I remember hearing the story.
He came over, and I'm asleep in my recliner. It was one Saturday afternoon. I dozed off. And he comes in, and he goes, Chris is a big boy. He said, hey, you want to play Mercy? I said, what? He said, you want to play Mercy? He said, we've been playing Mercy. I'm really good at it. I said, okay, whatever. And so he stands up there, and we get our fingers locked together. I put him in the floor like about 2 seconds. And he's going, Mercy, Mercy, Mercy. And afterward, he said, man, I can't believe that you put me down that quick. I said, my wife's standing here. You think I'm going to let you beat me in front of my wife? I said, I would have kicked you in the nuts if I'd had to.
Yeah, you gotta represent when you're in front of the lady. You got to.
What was the story you wanted him to tell about my granddad?
Oh, I don't know who was present. I just remember you telling her
when he went in the woods with the coveralls.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, he had a couple of those instances. One of them, we were putting cedar siding on the end of a house, and guy that was helping us, his name was Ralph, and we're putting on siding, and Daddy said, I got to go to the woods. So he goes to the woods, and he comes back, and we're putting on siding, and he keeps going. I said, what are you doing? I was just a teenager. He said, I smell shit. I said, I don't know. And Ralph starts laughing, and he said, what are you laughing? He said, because you shit on the bib of your overalls. He said, it's right under your nose. So, but then he told me he was working with my grandpa. They were working on a house in Winston years ago. And back then there was no such thing as a porta-john. And so he said we were working there in town, and he said it hit me, I had to go. And he said it was so cold that I had on coveralls over my other clothes. He said I walked till I found a little patch of woods, and I got down there in the woods creek bank down where nobody could see me, and he said, get my coveralls down. He said, I use the bathroom, and he said, when I get done cleaning up, I get my pants back up and everything. He said, I went to put my coveralls up on. He said, I get up on one shoulder and then take this side and sling it up like that. And he said, something goes, pow, hits me in the back of the head. He said, I reached back and went, oh, yes. he had gone in his coveralls and then slung it on the back of his head. And so he went up and he told my grandpa, he said, we got to go home. He said, no, we can't go home. We got to work the rest of the day. So he had to go back down to the creek and try to clean up, take his coveralls off, and then he had to try to clean up and was cold and wet the rest of the day.
Oh gosh.
And still probably smell bad.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
You put someone from our generation in that situation. Maybe not one of us, but you put someone in that situation. They would have to go to the hospital. They would be done for a long time. But yeah, those are just some of the ones that I remember. I've heard so many, but this is one my dad heard from you a while back when everybody went to First Christian, about, and it's real simple, nothing crazy about it, but it was just, I always thought it was cool, about the tree faller. Had a retired forester, I guess, that.
Oh, Mr. Dehart, he used to cut big timber in Oregon, and he was the guy that climbed the tree and cut the top of the tree off, hanging on the side of the tree. So when you do that, you better know which way that tree's falling. And he was really good at following a tree. He was so good that, we've cut a lot of trees. I've always cut a lot of trees, but if we had one that was really, really hard to get where you wanted it, instead of having to pull it, a lot of times I'd go get Mr. Dehart. And so my Uncle Skip had one when he owned the part of the farm that I have now down here. There was a big poplar tree that was going to fall, leaning real bad, and it would have fell on his fence. And he wanted me to go up in the tree and hook a cable, and so we could pull it with a winch or a tractor. And I said, I think Mr. Dehart can cut that tree down. He said, my Uncle Skip said, I don't see any way. I said, let me go get him. So I went and found him, and he said, you got your saw there? I said, yeah. He said, sharp? I said, yeah. So he came, and he looks at the tree, and he goes, where you want it? My Uncle Skip said, I'd like for it to fall right there, but that's throwing it way up the hill. He said, well, y'all go stand up the hill up there. He notched the tree, and he sawed that tree, and he sawed all the way through that tree and pulled the saw out. Tree still standing there, walks up the hill, reaches in his pocket, gets his cigarette, shakes one out, puts it in his mouth, and we're all standing there like, what the heck? And a little bit we hear the thing go, pop, pop, boom. You could have drove a stake up there where he wanted that tree to fall, and he put it exactly where Uncle Skip said he wanted it.
Is that the same guy that got all the coon?
Yeah, he cut the tree down here that day, and it hit the ground, and the coons come pouring out of it, and he grabbed those coons up and put them in his coat. And when I tried to pay him, he said, this is all the pay I need right here.
I just think it's cool that before it started cracking and popping, he knew where it was going.
And already got a cigarette out.
Yeah, he had walked up to y'all. That's a cool story. I love the confidence of doing it probably several thousand times.
Yeah.
And just knowing, okay, you give it a minute. How do you know when a tree I've cut down several myself. I don't know when it's going to fall. Like, I wait until it starts to move. But
and then you run.
I've always thought that was an awesome story, just because the dude's like, yeah, that ought to do it. Give it a minute.
Yeah, he climbed a bunch of trees out in Oregon and sawed them off while he's hanging on the side of a tree up there, 100 feet in the air.
You couldn't pay me enough. That's one of the most dangerous jobs.
And that's another thing. And we live in a world today where nobody wants to take responsibility for anything. Now, like with what I do, we have to have workers' comp insurance and stuff. And yes, you want to take care of people. But, let's be reasonable about things too. If I come to your house to build something and I cut my finger with my saw, or I bend over and pick something up and I hurt my back, I knew when I started doing construction work that it was dangerous work. It's not your fault because you hired me to do something. It's not your fault that I got hurt. You know, I knew that there were risks involved when I did it, but we live in a time when nobody wants to be responsible for themselves. It's everything is somebody else's fault. And, you know, we really need to start teaching people to be responsible.
Accountability.
You know, yeah.
For their own actions
That's
and,
right.
and their own choices.
I mean, you know, I've got tons of hilarious stories about getting stopped from speeding and some that I didn't get caught and all that. But, you know, I had, you know, state trooper stopped me one day and says, why were you running 65 in this 45? Why are you going this fast? I said, same reason you do. I was in a hurry. I said, ain't that why everybody drives fast? I said, he said, do you know how fast you're going? I said, I run about 65. I mean, there's not, you know, just be honest with him. Yeah. I said, I don't have a good excuse. I said, you might as well go ahead and write me a ticket. I mean, I don't have a good excuse. My fault.
Hey, tell a story about being at Wake Forest and doing the burnouts in the parking lot. Let's wrap up with that, and maybe one more quick one.
I had a Bandit Trans Am, really, really nice. Ended up selling it. Didn't really want to sell it, but anyway, that's another story. And when Lisa and I were dating, we hadn't been dating a terribly long time, and at that time you could drive through Wake Forest University. And there was one parking lot down there that they'd just repaved, and it was real smooth asphalt pavement. And we'd been out maybe to a movie or something, and I'm coming back through there, and I drove through Wake Forest, and I said, check this out. I pulled down there in this parking lot. There's nothing in the parking lot. And, I mean, she's probably thinking, oh, my gosh, what is he doing? And I said, watch this. So I started doing figure eights with my Trans Am in the parking lot. I mean, I'm smoking the tires, you know, and I do that for a couple minutes, and then I pull off, and I circle back around the college, and I said, now watch this. I come back a little bit, and drove through there real slow, and there's a cop down there with a spotlight looking around. I said, ain't that cool? And she's like, what kind of guy am I going out with here?
That reminds me. I don't even know if we can tell this one, but
Careful. Careful.
What about when there was something in the glove box? Remember that?
Oh, we can't tell.
Okay. All right.
I did. Somebody else put it in there as a joke, and yeah, that wasn't funny.
All right, let's end on something crazy that's happened on the job site, just to kind of tie back to building, and then we'll wrap it up there.
We got a guy that I've known for years and years and years. He used to do plumbing for us and backhoe work for us, and he used to dig all our footings. And we were building a house in Kernersville. James and I, we were doing a house in Kernersville to sell, and Randy was supposed to come and dig the footings, and he's from Rural Hall, and that's back before everybody had a cell phone, you know. And we're down there, like, where's Randy? We're waiting and waiting and waiting, and you know, and like, he should have been here an hour ago to dig these footings. And finally we hear something like, what is that coming? And it was a backhoe. His truck had broken down, and he drove his backhoe from Rural Hall to Kernersville. Oh my God. and so the funny part was, as he was coming down 66, and he got to the intersection where 311 crosses there had been a red Corvette convertible behind him for quite a while with the top down. And the man and woman in the Corvette convertible, they had been shouting obscenities and flashing all kinds of obscene hand gestures to him. And so Randy, he's just staying the course. He's going along, and when he gets to that intersection, he turns around and looks at them, and they're back there just cussing him for everything they're worth. He just reaches around, gets the lever, stretches the boom out, and he's got just a little bit of red dirt dried on the bucket. Takes that bucket down between the man and woman in the Corvette and goes and shakes the bucket like that. And the red dirt fell off in that Corvette. And I mean, their eyes are about this big when they see this bucket coming at them. And so when the light changes, they went, peeled out around him and went on. But I'm going to say they probably thought twice before they cussed anybody out like that again.
Oh, gosh.
All right, you want to wrap it up there?
Yeah, man. We got a lot for next time.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we'll get into the courthouse shooting, and I'd like to get into some coon stories and all sorts of stuff.
We'll have plenty of time for that.
All right, you got anything you want to say before we stop?
No, guess that's it.
Okay, you want to do outro?
Sure. I'm Elijah Cox. This is Jonathan Allen. Our guest has been Mitch Allen. This is the Donnaha Station. Appreciate y'all listening.